All right, we are live. Welcome, Courtney, as people start to funnel in here. Thanks everyone for showing up. And we're going to get rocking today. And this is a topic that is a little bit more niche than usual, but we want to speak to how can we get your business, if you feel like you have plateaued, to double. Not just a couple extra deals per year, but if to take you from 15 to 30 deals, okay? Or from 20 to 40 deals. What things should you be doing to increase the amount of deals and ultimately increase income? And I know every agent, if you've been in this business for more than a year, have felt the cyclical nature and how redundant the cycles of the real estate industry can be. And sometimes it feels like you're a little bit trapped by the industry and you're like, hey, I don't know how to do more business. And that's exactly what we are going to spend the next 45 to 50 minutes talking about and give you guys some actionable ideas and steps to actually have a direct result in your bottom line. Because I know that if we're not doing deals, if we're not making money, then what are we doing here, right?
Yeah, 100%. I was just sharing with Ryan that I just had lunch with a former team member that's done in his first 6 months with the team, I think did 42 transactions, first 6 months licensed, and now does what, 15 to 20 units a year, I think, something like that, Ryan. And one of the things that we want to talk you through are the systems, the strategies, and the mindset required to build a referral business, a repeat business, a predictable business, one that has multiple silos that will yield you consistent income and consistent growth over the years, regardless of what's happening in the marketplace. And Ryan, I know that you've done a great job at insulating yourself from some of that over the years, and I can't wait to unpack this in this conversation today.
Yeah, and for the participants on here that may not know my background, I was a part-time agent for the first few years of being licensed. And I always had to look at my real estate business through the lens of like, hey, I only have so much time to work these deals. How can I do it the most efficient way possible? And then when I was able to give up my job, now I got a bunch of time. So now I was like, hey, I can either double my business or build something else and do the same amount of business of what I was currently doing. And what I want everyone to realize is if you think about doubling your business, a lot of agents will think, well, I have to double my time in order to get those results. And one of the biggest misconceptions is that time in equals results out. That can't be further from the truth. Yes, there may be some additional time or focus needed, but don't think of it just minutes worked equals results out or paychecks. There's ways that you can go about treating this like a business, treating this and having a legitimate business plan and executing on those things to where you're going to get to a point where your business can grow
Mhm.
without your time requirements matching the same ratio.
Ryan, one of the kind of most paramount foundational pieces of teaching that I've ever received, and I want to share it today because I think it's often overlooked. You get to a certain level of production or a certain level of business, and you forget, like, man, this is where I started, and this is why I'm here, and I continually evaluate it. And this is really what it comes down to. My friend, here's what you need to do. If you determine what it is that you want to make on a per year basis, okay, this is straight math. You want to make $250,000 per year. Okay, here's what I want you to do. Ask yourself how many weeks you intend on working this year. Okay. And then ask yourself how many hours per week you want to work on average during those weeks and divide that back. Okay. What that's going to tell you is what your hourly rate will be, right? And so say your hourly rate works out to be $50 an hour. Okay. Real simple math. Don't do anything. And I'm talking, do not do anything in your business that you can hire out for about $15 to $18 an hour or less. And that's the rule of thumb that we both applied. You look at a third of what it is that your hourly rate is. And once you're at a third, hire that shit out. Okay. There's just no way to be a $200 an hour employee if you're doing $20 an hour work, right? You just lost $180. So that simple concept, as soon as I really understood it, completely changed everything in my entire life. And I immediately started getting help, and I immediately started getting time freedom, and by accident, more money. I wasn't just more focused on trying to get time, but really both of those things happened. And I know, Ryan, you've done a great job of that too.
Yeah. Another I mean, we don't want to get too mathy here, but just take what you want to make the next year, divide it by 4,000, and that's the number that Courtney's talking about. Dan Martell calls it the buyback rate. So just whatever you want to make, divide it by 4,000. If you're doing things or tasks that you could hire out for that amount, you should be doing that. Because when we think about growing our business or doubling our business, for example, we don't all of a sudden get 48 hours in a day. We still have the same 24 hours. And so I think a lot of agents feel like they're working hard throughout the day, feel like they're doing a lot of things. But when you were to actually look at it, it's like, hey, those things that they're doing, number one, aren't revenue producing. They're not getting you closer to the deal. And also, number two, you could hire it out. And if you guys didn't watch last week's webinar, Courtney had shared with you guys just the fact, for example, if you don't have the money to pay, just tie that person in to incentivize them to get paid once you do a deal. Maybe you give them a 15% bump on their services. Guys, you have whole paychecks to work with. Always think of that. Think of future revenue. How can you leverage it to do the things that you actually should be doing in your job? Because I don't know about you guys, but I did not get into this business to go pound signs into the ground, to input listings into the MLS, to run around and grab checks. I got into this business to help people. So I always want to think about, what am I doing today to get closer to the next relationship? The next relationship will hopefully drive business down the road. If I'm human focused instead of task focused and busy focused,
Yeah.
you're gonna build the foundation to explode your business.
That's a quotable quote for you, Ryan. If I'm human focused instead of task focused. Yeah, that's really critical. And one of the things that we're going to talk about in today's webinar as well, friends, is we're going to be looking at time audits. Okay. Now that's going to be, I think, the third thing that we'll get to today with respect to how we're going to be talking about structuring your day. Before we can get into the time audit and understanding what that means or how to audit time or what matters, what's dollar productive, we actually want to take a step back and then analyze what we already know to be dollar productive activities. These are activities that we know are most likely to generate revenue in the near term. Okay. So as an example, branding, maybe I put a banner up somewhere around town or pay for a billboard. Okay. I'm not saying that that's not going to generate business, but it's likely not going to generate business today. Okay. That's branding. It takes some time for a brand to get penetration in the marketplace. However, if I go knock 100 doors today, I'm guaranteed to get 1 to 3 buyers or sellers. That's just kind of the ratio depending on the neighborhood and the time of year. Okay. So those are dollar productive activities. I might want to look at how I'm spending my time so that I can get closer to those dollars per hour and that ultimate goal. So Ryan, I wonder if you couldn't just share with our listeners today a little bit about your take on dollar productive activities.
Yeah, I love that. So I call them, I shorten it up, I call them RPAs, revenue producing activities. And you'll see high producing agents, they may structure their day a little bit differently, but I can almost guarantee you there's going to be at least 90 minutes, ideally 2 hour chunk of time where it's solely focused on RPA activities, whether it's door knocking. If you do have some a CRM that you're dialing into, that's a great RPA that gets you close to business as possible. And like Courtney said, I'm not saying like branding out in the, in your community isn't a bad thing, but that's more like long-term play. We're looking at like, what can we be doing today to generate business for us in the immediate future? I call it more like hunting business, not farming business.
Yeah.
So I personally, especially when I was starting out, when I wanted to start scaling deals, I had to time block 2 hours a day. I did it in the mornings because that's when my energy was best. Some people may say, well, you should do it in the evenings. You'll get more answers. I'm like, no, of this 2 hours from 9:15 to 11:15, this little supercomputer here is off. It's not even in my room. It's not distracting me. For 2 hours, I'm going to be dialing into our database, reaching out to people that I already know via Facebook, via text message, asking them how I can help them, right? Again, it's going to be human focused, not
Yeah.
salesy focused, not sales language. We're coming from a level of service, thinking about in this next 2 hours, how can I connect with other people to figure out where they're at with home ownership, which is a great question to ask people, by the way, or if it is a lead that's dropped into us, when are they thinking about making a move, right? 2 hours religiously, Monday through Friday, non-negotiable. Doesn't matter if I have a deal on fire. Doesn't matter if I, have some other things coming to my life that I can't control. This phone is off. Because like I said, it's not time equals results. It's more of focus equals results, in my opinion.
Mhm.
A lot of agents can dial for 2 hours, but every time I look at them, they're sending a text message to their buddy, or they're sending a Snapchat, right?
That's
Or
true.
they're scrolling Instagram. They're like, I did 2 hours today, like that, I'm good to go, right?
Mm-mm.
That's not squeezing the juice out of those 2 hours. If you want to double your business, if you have a moderate level of business right now and you want to get to a higher echelon, you have to be more diligent with your time. And what ends up happening is a lot of those fires that come into your life in those 2 hours, they put themselves out anyways,
Yep.
right? So
Mhm.
I love, at least from, especially with a team standpoint, with a lot of PPC leads coming in, it's 2 hours a day of dialing. And if you want to break from that, fine, but go out and door knock, go out and flyer drop, go out and figure out how can you be in front of as many human beings as possible and ask them how you can be of service to them.
That's just like mic dropping moments right there, friends. For anyone on this webinar, and there's so many of you here today, great to see you. That right there is the magic. Okay. You have to have a high number of conversations with people about real estate to do a high number of real estate transactions. There's a direct correlation. Okay. And as you get better, this is the beauty in it. Like the more you practice these skills, the better your closing ratio gets. So you can actually make fewer dials and affect the same number of outcomes or more, right? Depending on what you're trying to accomplish. So imagine, in the early days, you're cutting your teeth, you're trying to get your scripts right, and you're trying to feel comfortable making all these phone calls, right? Well, you're 2 hours a day, maybe you're getting through 50 to 60 calls, and the conversations aren't going well, and you're not setting a ton of appointments. Well, listen, give that a month after you've made 1,000 of those dials. And in that same amount of time, you'll have 60, 70, 80, maybe even 100 dials in there, more conversations that are shorter, higher intent, higher conversion, more appointments. There will come a time where you literally won't have time because you'll be so busy. Now, we're going to say to you, protect that as long as possible. But the more that you do that, the more that you'll slide into repeat and referral business. Okay. And we're going to be talking to you how to do that as well. But for the average agent that's getting started, you got to ask yourself, what's the work that I can do today that's going to connect me most closely to a paycheck? Because I don't talk to too many agents that are in their first few years doing 10, 20 deals a year that are like, yeah, do you know what? I love it the way that it is. And I'm just looking at saving some more time. It's like, listen, I know you got lots of time because it doesn't take much time to do 10, 20 deals. What you're looking for is to double your business without stretching yourself so thin. This is the way you do it. You increase your number of contacts. And it doesn't matter how you do it, FYI. I don't care if you're cold calling. We've got scripts for you. I don't care if you want to do open houses. We got the mega open house strategy for you. I don't care if you got PPC leads, Facebook leads, you got a sphere of influence, you got to message friends on Facebook, whatever. Okay. What we want you to be thinking about is how can I engage in that human way, caring on people, facilitating a journey of self-discovery, coming from curiosity, earning the opportunity to have conversations with these people about their real estate needs, and then setting appointments to talk about that. Simple as
Mm-hmm.
that. Mhm.
Love that. And so on the flip side of the coin, what I see some newer agents doing, especially younger, newer agents. I have a buddy of mine, he's doing this, which I totally disagree with. He's in his first year of business. He wants to do more. Does a decent number of business deals, probably 15 to 18 deals in his first year, and he wants to do more deals. So he goes out, hires an ad agency and an ISA to pay them to then set appointments in his calendar. And that is not the way to do it, at least not a way to get manageable scale in your business. You need to be the ISA. And if we want to talk about the mindset needed to this, I take it like this. Hey, if I can commit to 2 hours a day in my morning for at least 100 days to change my life, I'll do that.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I will absolutely burn the boats and commit to 2 hours a day for 100 days, knowing that if you do it properly, it will change your life. And that's legitimately what happened to me. It took me longer than 100 days,
Sure.
but it was just like, hey, I am going to be doing this no matter what else is going on in my life. I'm not booking a haircut for 10:30 a.m. anymore, right? Like, no, I
Mhm.
am dialing for 2 hours a day. I'm burning the boats. I'm going to change my life. And when you take it from with that mindset, things do change. The beauty of this, it's not going to cost you that much more to do that.
I had one of the best pieces of advice from a mentor not that long ago, actually. And it's funny because it's not something that I didn't already know, but it was great to be reminded that it doesn't go away and it doesn't change depending on where you're at in your business. Okay. Now, my truth is I make millions of dollars a year, have for many years. Okay. And so at a certain point, you feel like you get a pass on things, or maybe you get complacent or like, I don't have to do this kind of work anymore because, this is where I'm at in my career. And my mentor says to me, this was about running ads. Okay. This is like straight up like Facebook ads. And he's like, Courtney, you have to be in there doing this yourself. Nobody will do it as well as you. And I'm looking at it like it's low dollar work, right? He's like, that's some of the most important work that you can do. And furthermore, you can't ask somebody to do this important work for you unless you are able to upside down sideways 100 times out of 100 know exactly what's happening every single time. And in order for you to have that level of proficiency to get somebody else in there doing that work for you, you have to stay with it that long. Now, same said for scripts. Now, the thing about Ryan's friend, and I'll just dive a little more deeply on that, and I don't mean to speak ill, I don't know who it is, but here's my thinking, okay? If you're doing 15 deals a year, that's good, okay? And in some markets, that's great, all right? But here's what I know. You're not prospecting very much. There's not a lot of conversations happening, and there's lots more opportunity if you can convert at a higher level just with what you've already got. Like if you know how to speak to people better and know how to facilitate the journey of self-discovery better, that 15 deals becomes 20 deals. And that's without changing anything, okay? You know how you get there? Yeah, more conversations, right? You're just practicing your scripts, your dialogues, your processes, you're, working through that with new people, with cold leads, with warm leads or whatever. And then once you've made thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dials and had those chats and got yourself up to 15, 25, 35 deals now, yeah, maybe you do look at outsourcing some of that work to somebody, but you know exactly what works. You know exactly the tonality, you know exactly the scripts, exactly the processes, and you can hold that person to account. The unfortunate reality about this agent is they're trusting the most important part of their business to somebody in a different country being paid $4, $5, $6 an hour. That just doesn't make sense, friends.
And just to kind of hammer this home, this is talking about taking an agent from 10, 15, 20 deals to 40, 50 deals. Like Courtney said, there is a time where you can leverage out of that stuff, but you need to be the master of it. You need to look at this business like a craft, and you haven't mastered that craft yet if you're only doing 10 or 15 deals. So you can't cut out the quote hard work, the prospecting, the revenue producing activities until you've gotten to a threshold and had the results of 60 or 70 deals for consecutive years to leverage away from that stuff. Because if you do scale up accordingly, you're going to be able to give away some of that harder work to other people and not really care if it really pays dividends or not, because you have other silos of business working for you.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, it does need to be earned. And really what we're talking about here, friends, is building a scalable but stable business. Okay. It's like building a strong foundation, right? And in order to have a strong foundation in your business, you have to have these core skills. Okay. You can't bring people into your organization or step out of responsibilities that you can't do well on your own. You can't oversee the responsibility and see that it's being done well and know if there's these little subtle nuances that are being missed. You're missing out on opportunities and you're missing out on income, and you might not even know it, that you're burning now thousands of dollars for something that's not working in the way that it should. And you wouldn't have that awareness yet because you haven't learned the job yet, right? Very critical.
Love that. Love that. Let's move over, because I can't wait to get into this part, Courtney, with the time audit. And I'll let you take this one, but this is very, very foundational, and this is a great practice for you guys to go through. If you feel like, hey, I'm doing 15, I'm doing 20 deals, how am I possibly going to do more deals or fit it into my calendar? I feel like I'm, 8, 9 out of 10 kind of busy already. How am I going to double it when I only feel like there's marginal time left over?
Yeah. So there's two things that I want to focus on here, Ryan, and you touched on one. One's the energy audit and one's the time audit. The energy audit's simple, so why don't we start there? Okay. I just want you, for the sake of the next week, just to be really intentional. And you can track this on an app or whatever. I don't think you'll need to. I think you just need to be conscious of it. Okay. I want you to think about, during the times of your day, when do you have peak energy? Okay. And so what I assess peak energy to be is like, when are you most enthusiastic? When are you most likely to smile? When are you most likely to go up and high five a stranger? When are you most likely to go over and introduce yourself to somebody at the grocery store? When are you that person? Like, just when are you more outgoing? Okay. Is that like first thing in the morning on your walk with your dog? Is that at the end of the day, on your way home from work? Is it midday at lunchtime? I can tell you that I'm a lot like Ryan. Okay. Like, I get up in the morning between the hours of 4 and say 6. My brain's not really firing yet, but by 6, I feel pretty smart. I'm pretty plugged in and I'm pretty motivated. I like to do work that's like mind work. kind of like between say 6 and 9, and my workout and all that other stuff. But if I have to do work, mind stuff 6 to 9 because nobody's bothering me, I can be super focused and I can stay lasered in on it. Okay. Now, if I'm going to be doing prospecting, speaking to people, managing objections, I still need a lot of brain power. I still need a lot of gumption to do that. And like Ryan, I would want to do that between kind of like 9 and 11, 8 and 10 if I could, whatever. All right. Now, for showings and so forth, I just know in the afternoon, like, man, I'm generally petering out by like 1 to 3 o'clock. That's probably like the belly of my day, like the lowest amount of energy that I got. But I'm not going to ditch a family out on showings because I got low energy. I'm going to go grab a coffee and show up, right? Like I just know I'm not going to not do that work. It's already booked. Okay. I also know that like if I need to post on social or do something easy at my desk, it's got a reasonable chance of getting done between 1 and 3 because let's be honest, it doesn't require a whole bunch of outgoing, ambitious energy. So energy audits, thing one, just be mindful of your peaks and valleys and ask yourself, like, is it wiser to do the hard revenue generating work that I need to do during a valley of energy or during a peak of energy? Where am I most likely to succeed? Well, chances are during a peak, right? So that's thing one. Thing two that I want you to ask yourself, and this is related to your time audit. Okay. This one does require a little bit of work. Some people like to get an app. I've seen some people just simply use an alarm that goes off every 15 minutes or every 30 minutes. There's a lot of different ways you can do this. It's super simple. Track exactly what it is that you're doing in 15-minute chunks throughout your day. And in an ideal world, you'll do it for 2 weeks. Okay. Worst case, do it for 7 days. Don't do it for less. Okay. And don't pretend like you did it. Actually do it. It really does matter. We're talking about millions of dollars here. Like it's a significant thing. Okay. So it makes sense to put the effort in. Here's what I want you to do. Track specifically what you're doing. Checked emails, sent emails, went on Facebook, was in the bathroom, made lunch, went out for groceries, Like track these things in 15-minute segments. Okay. Then what I want you to do is go to Staples and get yourself 4 highlighters. Okay. Different color highlighters. All right. And these are the categories that I want you to use. Okay. So after you've done this either a week or 2 weeks, ideally, all right, I want you to go back through that entire list. And I want you just to start highlighting things that you think thematically are more or less the same. Like, emails and kind of like administrative stuff could be one color. Okay. Then it could be like sales related, could be another color. Just go through and kind of like categorize things. You can circle them too. It really doesn't matter so much, just as long as you can kind of like group them into different groups. Doesn't necessarily have to be 4. So the idea of 4 colors there is not the best. Those 4 really come in handy later on. So then what I want you to do is go back and now ask yourself a separate question. Okay, so you've grouped these bits of work together in whatever categories you think that they'll fit. Try to kind of like summarize best you can, however many groups there are. Now, I want you to go back and ask yourself this question. Which one of these was high revenue generating work? Okay, meaning if I did a lot of this, I'm going to be connected to more paychecks. And which one of these, if I did a lot of this, is probably not going to connect me to immediate paychecks. And so I can tell you that talking to a property inspector is not high dollar activity. Do you know why? Because the only reason to talk to a property inspector is because you've already got a deal. Okay. Or you're probably going to have a deal. Okay. Same with your banker, returning a call from a lawyer's office. Like all of these things, okay, are on deals that have probably already happened. I didn't need to write that deal. That's not high dollar productive activity. Okay. High dollar productive activity is anything that's going to get me to the point of getting a contract in place, a phone call outbound to a prospect that I talked to 6 months ago and is now ready, a friend who I'm speaking to and I'm calling and asking them for a referral, cold calling, door knocking, open houses, anything like that is going to be prospecting, high dollar activities. Okay. Now, the other category, right? Sending emails, writing on Facebook, doing whatever else, lower dollar activities. 2 categories, just group those together in whatever way you want to. Okay. Now, the third thing that I want you to do is now go through your list and ask yourself this question. Where was I in the highest state of flow? Okay. Now that's a little bit of a weird question for some people. Okay. But it's like, where did I feel the best? Okay. Like, what was I doing when I was completely at peace, just loving my life, doing work where I was like, man, I feel great. Like this thing that I was doing right here fills my bucket, feels good, and I would love to do more of it. Okay. And again, I want you to go through that same list and find those things. I also want you to go back through the list and find the things that you felt like just really put that pit in your stomach. They just kind of like brought you down. And when you were thinking about them, you were procrastinating on them. And when you had to do them, you were just bummed out and you couldn't really bring your A game no matter how hard you tried. Okay. And here's what we're looking for, friends, after we've gone through all of this. We're looking for the things that are what? High dollar producing and in flow, right? That's what I'm looking for. I want to know, like, where am I doing work that makes me a lot of money that I feel really good? Okay. And that's the stuff that I'm going to prioritize. And it's not going to be a huge list. That's the point. Okay. But whatever you land on might be one thing, might be two things that hits both of those topics. We want you to be doing more of it. Okay. So if you just love open houses and that like just fills your bucket right up and like that's the thing, hey man, power to you. Do more open houses. Okay. If it's like that's making you money, but so is the cold calling, but that cold calling gives you the pit in the bottom of your stomach. Well, don't think about it. I mean, maybe a little bit, but just do more open houses. You love it and you're great at it and it generates income. Do that. Do more of it, right? Go deeper on the stuff that you love. Okay. You know, it's generating capital for you. You know, it's giving you energy, right? And most importantly, these other dollar productive activities that you know are effective, just do them in your peak power zone, right? Because guess what? If you love open houses, you'll do them no matter what. You'll do them at midnight. You'll do them at 5 o'clock when your energy's down. You'll do them at lunchtime. You love it. You'll do it anytime. It doesn't matter. But the high dollar productive activities that you don't love so much, you still need to do them sometimes. Hey, do those in your peak power zones. You'll get them done. Hold yourself accountable to it. Your odds of success are just so much greater. And when you've looked at that list and you can see those things that bring the pit in the bottom of your stomach and you hate doing them, right? And they're not dollar productive, we're going to have a serious look at those things and then ask ourselves, hey, is this stuff that I can either let go of, do less of, or outsource? Okay. And because you've already done the exercise where you know your dollars per hour, you've put that third rule in place. So let's say you want to make $100 an hour. Anything you can hire for less than $33 an hour that puts that pit in your stomach that falls into that category. We're going to look at how many of those we can bundle up and who we can put in charge of those things, get our SOPs in place, get somebody onboarded and looking after that stuff for you so that you can scale up your time to more high dollar productive activities. Does that make sense, Ryan?
I love that. And I've been writing down a few things here. And to just drive this home, for example, when we do this with clients, especially team leaders and solo agents that are doing a decent amount of deals, we'll ask them to do it for 7 days or ideally 2 weeks. It never gets to 7 days before I get a text after 2 or 3 days and they're like, oh, I get it. Okay. And I'll give you guys an exact example of this. I see this all the time. I follow a few agents in town and they'll be on social kind of bragging about how busy they are in the day and they'll show their audience what they do throughout a day. And for example, and this is what I was writing down because literally I saw this last week. For example, this is exactly what not to do, but this is going to drive the point home for you. An agent goes to work at 9 a.m. From 9 to 9:45, they go hammer in a sign on a new listing, and then they have to drive across town to pick up a referral check. Okay. From 10 to 11, they attend a property inspection.
They
From
put this on social media?
Yeah, yes. From 11 to 11:30, there was a broker meeting they attended. From 11:30 to 12, they were doing FinTracks. From 12 to 12:30, they had to go post a tenant notice for a showing. And then from 12:30 to 1, they were calling other agents back and doing emails. So that, believe it or not, guys, is somewhat of a typical day for some agents. And that's why they don't feel like they can go from 15 to 30 deals because they're like, I don't have enough time. And
Yeah.
I promise you guys, one of the biggest keys to this, I should have probably mentioned this just at the beginning, is like just being aware. Awareness is going to unlock the different levels to your business. You have to be aware of what you're doing and ask yourself the hard question, like, is this actually serving me for what I want this business to be?
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, that agent was busy all morning. 100, I'm not debating that, but
Yeah.
it's like, hey, how many of those things were getting them closer to the next deal? And I'm sorry, going to a property inspection, that's not one of them.
Don't do it. You know, I love this conversation. I'm so glad that you brought that up because that agent thinks that that's their job, right? They really do. And they're proudly talking about it on social media. Okay. And you know what? Maybe the marketplace looks at that and I was like, good realtor. Maybe that's what people are thinking. Okay. I can tell you this, that's not a way to scale. That's a way to get burned out. It's a way to have a lot of conversations. It's a way to hang out with a lot of people, but it's not a way to make more money at all, right? Like we really want to flip that day completely on its end and add stuff to the early part of the day that's going to create more opportunities, right? And so like you need somebody to go to your property inspection, depending on the property, the province that you're in Canada, hire that out. There's an agent at your brokerage that'll do that for $50 for you. Hey, if it
Mhm.
takes 2 hours, which it will, by the time you leave your office, get off task, drive, get there, talk to the inspector, get the report, and get back to task, it's 2 hours anyways. Somebody will do that for $50. Now you just made them a $25 an hour employee, okay? And you've got yourself 2 hours of prospecting. Now that's going to make money, right?
Mhm.
Or going to get this check. Like pretty well every city that we know of, for $50, you can go pay somebody to go pick up a check for you, right? We have a delivery person, right? So now it's an hour, right? Time to get off task, go drive, come back, cash the check. Guys, I've never picked up a check, okay, ever, because I know that that's an hour for me to get back to work. If I can pay a person 50, that's $50 an hour. Great, let them do the work. I get to stay on task, make my prospecting phone calls and generate more business, right? Like we have to be mindful of how we're spending our time. I just love that example that it's so
Mhm.
real.
Mhm. And I do have a theory, and can never measure this, but you always see stats about like how 85% of agents or 80%, you see different percentages depending on where you look, they don't make it to year five. Year five is always like the threshold of where all these statistics are based off of. And for the general public out there, they automatically think about, well, that agent's not doing enough business to keep their license. And yeah, sure, that can be true. But I honestly think, guys, that the main reason is because people get burnt out of the business. They can't see themselves doing it for a career. They hit year four and it's been a grind. Now they're getting somewhat busy. They don't know how to scale. And by the end or the time they hit year five, they're like, I need to go do something else. So I do not think, and again, there's no way to measure this. I don't really think the biggest catalyst is money. I honestly think it's just people get burnt out of this business. The
Yeah.
business starts running them and they go do something else.
It's funny. We talked about somebody this morning here, Ryan, didn't we? That did so well in the team. 42 transactions the first 6 months licensed. I mean, that's a stellar performance. But this agent really, really burned himself out just by working on sheer horsepower. And you can do that for a period of time. Like I had that kind of gumption for say 5 years where I worked day and night and did a load of transactions, but it just wasn't sustainable. And then you start thinking, well, how can I continue to make more income in this business without giving my life away, without giving my health away, without giving time with my children away? And what did it for me, I'll share the story today, Ryan, was that, I was that person for sure. I was growing a team, okay? And I was also selling a load of real estate. I was continually trying to sell more real estate and I was continually trying to grow the team. And so I really was burning the candle at both ends. A lot of times not stopping work until 1 in the morning, a lot of times getting up at 5 or 6 to start it all over again. And that went on for years. Well, I could have probably kept going for maybe a little while longer, but we had had children by this point. Now, one kid, my wife was asking me to slow down, take some more time with the family. So she convinced me that I would give up 2 evenings a week. I think it was Tuesdays and Thursdays that I committed to just being home after 7:30. I wouldn't go out anymore after that because I would go come home for dinner and then go back out on appointments. So this was a night where I would come home and stay 2 nights a week. The second kid came along and she's like, listen, like this is way crazier. Like two kids is like 300% harder than one, as any parent out there knows if you have two. And she's like, listen, like I need you around like a lot more, like not just a little bit more. Like I need you to take at least Sunday off, like fully off, phone down, fully present, and literally every night of the week, but maybe one night. And I was like, man, how is this gonna be possible? Like it's just I couldn't see how it would work. But I knew these principles, right? I'd been taught them and I'd applied them, but like not at this level. Okay. And so I had to take a real serious look and say, okay, like what kind of life am I trying to build, right? Do I want to build a life where my wife resents me, my children don't know me, or do I want to build a life where my wife loves me, appreciates me, and my kids know me, right? And so I took the advice, I followed through, and I found some ways to scale out of that work. And here's what happened. I did more business, right? I said no to more people, and I told them why. And they honored the fact that I was a different person, that I was more commanding and demanding of my time. I said yes to fewer people. And really, what happened, and it's a very interesting thing that you'll find as you start to do this, kind of when you step into that level of power, people respect you more. And here's the next and most interesting thing. Then you have this like allure of exclusivity around you. And now they want to fight to work with you, which I found very interesting because, for many, many years up until that point, I felt like I was fighting to work with them. And all I had to do is just say, yeah, do you know what? I've got some commitments Tuesday and Wednesday night. So if we're going to meet, it's got to be tonight at 5. And I would just stop. And they would be like, holy shit, this guy doesn't care if he has my business or not. And I want to work with them because he's exclusive. Next thing I know, we're doing it Monday at 4 o'clock, right? Because that's the time that I've given them that I'm available. And I'm not letting them know, oh, yeah, call me anytime. I'm free. I'm like, no, I'm not available anytime. If you call me after 5 o'clock, I'm not going to get back to you till the next morning, at least until 10,
Mhm.
and probably not until noon.
It's interesting, isn't it, Court? And what agents have to understand is like they may be on the other end of the screen being like, well, I don't have that pressure in my schedule or pressure from having a family in order to be that person. But the whole mindset shift is you need to have dashes of that person already within you and act
Yeah.
like that, and you actually start, your conversion goes up. I've experienced the same thing in the last 2 years as well, especially this year. And that's another plateau. That's another ceiling that you can bust through too.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing, friends, that you can employ here, just to a little bit more detail on what Ryan's saying, because he's absolutely right. Join golf league, join your local chess club, like whatever it is that you are passionate about so that you can feel like you're living a balanced life and not giving it all away to real estate kids league, whatever it is that you're interested in doing, do that, commit to it. Tell people that you're doing it so that you've got accountability and you can't get out of it and then go do deals while you're doing it or instead of doing it. But here's the thing that I want you to remember. When you're talking to people about booking time, booking schedules, getting in front of buyers and sellers, here's the script that I want you to use. So I'll say, Ryan, really appreciate the opportunity to go see some houses with you. I'm looking at my schedule here, Ryan, and I've got some time, 2 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon or Thursday afternoon at 3. Which one of those two times would work best for you, Ryan?
Thursday.
So let's say he picks, but let's say he says, well, what about Wednesday night? I'm tied up during the daytime. So say Wednesday night.
Yeah, Wednesday's actually best for us.
Yeah, do you know what, Ryan? I'd love to show you Wednesday night. I tried that. That seller's not available, and I'm actually tied up Wednesday night too. So, what about that Thursday? Would that work better for you?
Yeah, sure. I guess if it has to be that day, then we'll
Okay,
make it work.
sounds good. So, first of all, I don't want to always make it about me, particularly in the early stages of the relationship with the client, because they don't care enough about me and my schedule to give me a pass. So, in the early days, I'll make it about the seller and about me. And then later on, I can just say, yeah, do you know what? I don't have that time free. We can't go then. Once that person's under agency, okay, then we're going to honor my schedule. And listen, for sure, there might be these instances where it's a hot new property and it's going to go into competition and it's the only one. So use a showing partner. Don't give away
Mhm.
your life on this stuff. That's a whole other session that we can talk about, but don't give your life away. Protect your time. And when you do, people will honor your time and you'll make more money.
I love that. And accountability is a loose term that gets thrown around all the time, especially in the personal development space. But no one thinks about, how can I structure some accountability in my schedule, right?
Mhm.
And literally burn the boats on saying that you're going to be doing something or not doing something and committing to it for a long period of time, because there's going to be some friction in there in the first few months of, say, for example, if you commit to your wife that you're not going to be working in the evenings, it's going to feel weird. And that's where I want agents to lean into those situations and be like, hey, this is actually me growing as an agent. This is me getting better at my craft. And yes, there is some short-term discomfort, but once you get used to that, then you're like, oh my gosh, I should have done this 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. And every single time that you hit a ceiling, there are things that you can do. And I always lean to like, what can you be giving up in order to scale accordingly to bust through that ceiling? And that's what's so cool about this industry. It's not like you're capped, right? There's always mechanisms and always mindset shifts and always things that you can be doing to either do more deals or do the same amount of deals with way less time. And that's why I love this business.
It's also important to note here, and I know that we've got to wind it up here fairly soon, but one of the things that I like to speak about when we're in this realm, Ryan, for all of our viewers today, and again, thank you all for being here. It's so cool to see such huge attendance. And be sure to share this with your friends. You'll know more about what's coming up in the coming weeks. So please feel free to invite them to the real estate growth community on Facebook and make them aware of these Monday webinars that we do. I want you to be mindful of the fact that there's never the requirement, okay, to scale. Okay. You might be happy making $200,000 per year. But what if instead of doing that, working 40 hours or 50 hours a week, you could do that in 30 hours a week? Like, wouldn't that be better, right? If you could net the same money and just work less. All of it relates to scale, okay? And some people like to apply scale so that they can make more money working the same hours or even working more hours. Others want to apply scale so that they can salvage time. In either case, no matter what your motivation is, if it's more money, more income, bigger life, or more time with family, or what have you, less stress, you name it, the key thing that I want you to remember is that your being impacts your doing. Okay. And so how you are showing up, how you are being, okay, is directly correlated to how much of that you can accomplish, how quickly, be it additional income, be it additional time. Okay. And Ryan's point reminded me of this of, what do I have to let go of? Well, I might have to let go of the idea that my clients need me 100% of the time. Like, that's an ego-based thought, right? And I have a team, it's called the Atkinson team. Well, I can promise you that there was a very long period of time where I had to get over the fact that people needed me because they were calling me. It's not true. People were calling me because of the service that I could provide them. But what if I could train others to provide that same level of service or even better service, which is the case here now? Well, then my ego has to dissipate a little bit, doesn't it? And that's a hard thing to let go of, right? Like this idea of self-importance, okay? And so being different, right, impacts that income, and letting go of ego and letting go of that self-importance has allowed me to scale multiple companies because I don't care about being the person that's in front of a family getting recognized for doing the work. I care that that family is being cared for in the way that's most meaningful to them. And that's what they care about. And so we're in alignment in that way. And I get to help more people replicate that, both through the team and the coaching company and my personal life and all that we do. So that's one of the things that I just wanted to give an example of, Ryan, about being versus doing. Because I think so often agents just think, do. I'm going to add, I'm going to add, I'm going to add, I'm going to add. Yeah, it's a sure way to burn out. And maybe you will make more money, but you're adding and adding and adding. You got to let go of some things. And sometimes those things are your way of being, right?
Love that. Yeah. To what expense really is the question, right? Because you can work as much as you want and marginally make more money, but to what expense? And I love that, Court. The last topic I wanted to touch on here before we wind up is just silos of business or silos of revenue. Because to me, I love visuals, especially if I'm thinking about, hey, what does my next year look like? If I have to dip into a quarter, like, hey, where was my business coming from? Is there thematic kind of streams of revenue, or I call them silos of revenue, that we can basically build our business off of? And this is, business building 101. When you look at your income statement, like, where did the revenue come from? And for agents, we just look at sometimes every deal just as the same and don't really unpack where it came from, where it originated from. But for those of you that are looking at doing more deals, a great exercise to do would be go back through the last 18 months, 24 months, however long you've been in the business, and think about where did that deal come from, right? And just start writing them down and seeing if you can't group them into some type of themes, or what I would call silos. My silos, personally, I'll share them with you right now. Sphere of influence is a big silo of mine. Referrals, big silo of mine. Those are two very different things, okay? Farming business. So like, for example, around my own neighborhood that I live in, my long-term plays, what am I doing to farm business over time? What am I doing for hunting business? That's more of like making dials in the day, right? That's more of open houses, those type of activities. And then my other silo would be business generated from listings. I call that like my listing babies silo of revenue. So all of those are basically foundational pieces that all drive up towards my bank account, all drive up towards top revenue. And what I would encourage you guys to do is think about your silos and think about, what can I be doing this week or today or Put it in your schedule for 20 minutes every single day. How can I be working each of those silos? What can you be doing this week to make your silo of sphere of influence business better? Okay. What can you be doing to make sure that you are actually farming your neighborhood this week? Because proactive thought is something that goes to the wayside, especially when we get busy. This is spring now, end of April 2024, and all agents are just going to be busy doing current business. But we have to think about, where's our business coming from? How can we make sure we're spending time accordingly and working on those silos so that we're setting ourselves up for future growth?
That's so powerful. And I think one of the things that I just wanted to just double back on, Ryan, and it really stuck with me, was this idea of, and I always just pictured myself like treading water. I don't know what it was, but like to me, that was just like the analogy. And I just kind of felt like I was just like bobbing for air, just barely staying ahead of the tasks that I had, getting back to all these people and lawyers, and my phone's blowing up and I can't seem to remember all the people and all the things. And what I settled on was this, after doing that for so many years. I realized that we're in a world, guys, where everybody has access to everybody full time. Okay. Yes, real estate agents, our phone numbers are out there in the world. Okay. All of our clients have them. And, in some cases, agents are telling people, call me anytime. And then other agents now have that expectation of one another. Okay. And so I started to see this pattern where not only would sometimes buyers and sellers start to treat me like this, until I flipped the script and started using some of the strategies that I shared with you earlier, but agents, you could never train agents out of that. So they'd call you and call you and call you and blow your phone up and leave these rude messages about how dare it take so long to get back to them. And Ryan, like, meanwhile, I'm just prospecting, building my business, growing, doing more deals quarter after quarter, year after year. And these agents are still as stressed out as they were 10 years ago doing their 40 transactions, except closer to death because of all the cortisol running through their veins. And I could never understand this idea that like you could just tread water and never want to solve the problem of treading water. Like, why wouldn't you just look around and say, do you know what? Like, how about we drain the tub? You know what? Like, it's just, there's too much water here. So I'm just going to stand up. Like, this doesn't make sense. Right. But we see it like all the time. Nobody is looking around saying, hey, like, what should I do about this proactively so that I don't have to continue to feel this way, so that I can create some systems in my business that are going to not only free me from the stress, free me from the grind, free me from all this time, but they're going to help me elevate my game, make more money, do more deals. And you and I both looked at that over the years and done those audits and, applied a lot of these principles and afforded ourselves a pretty fantastic life. I mean, why don't you tell our viewers a bit about your summers and what they look like with your golf? I think that's a great story.
Yeah, like golf is something, like if we were to audit our time, for example, like golf or some of the hobbies that I'm into, that's not a revenue producing activity whatsoever, right? That would be highlighted red, makes me no closer to that next deal, but
For
I
those
love
of you
it.
that
But
don't
I
know,
love it.
Ryan's very serious about
Yeah.
his golf because he's a pro golfer and he doesn't want to go out and talk to you. He just wants to beat you. That's it.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. And so I felt in the first few years of my business that I wasn't able to play as much as I wanted to or practice enough in order so that when I did get the opportunity to go play, I wasn't as sharp, and I hated that. And I'm like, well, I find a lot of joy in playing good golf. I find a lot of joy in tournaments because golf is my vehicle to competition. I didn't want to give that up, just like I don't want to give up time with my family. Like we just have a son now, and I don't want to give up time just because I'm putting out other fires or someone else is deeming something to be important and urgent, even though I don't see it that way. So I think it is a lot of awareness, and it's being like, hey, just because every other agent in my market is doing something doesn't mean that I have to, right? And I'll say that again, just because someone else outside of your conversation you're having with someone, or just, you're having dinner with your wife, just because someone else deems something urgent and important doesn't mean you have to. And if you want to make it past year 5, if you want to do 70 deals and feel like you don't work much, well, then you have to think differently.
Yeah.
You have to audit yourself. You have to look at your own business and be like, where can I be better? Personally, mentally, like literally the things that you're saying to people, like it requires a lot of self-reflection that way. And I think a lot of agents will just go year to year to year and not really lift their eyes up and look around and be like, oh my gosh, maybe I could do this better. So I think that's a good spot to leave this, Court. There's a lot of nuggets in there,
Yeah.
and really, really looking forward to continuing on doing these, guys. And if you guys need anything at all, hit that real estate growth community Facebook group. All of our topics are posted up in there. Any closing thoughts, Court?
Just one real quick. I just wanted to ask all of our viewers today, because there's so many of you. Thanks again for showing up. But if you want to go ahead, just in the Real Estate Growth Community Facebook group, if there are topics that you would like us to dive more deeply on or address, no matter what they are, if they're relevant in your business or in your marketplace and you feel like we've overlooked them or maybe haven't spent enough time on them, we would love to have your insights, your thoughts, and your requests, and then we can go ahead and create some custom content for you. And if nothing else, at very least, we can talk about them inside the Real Estate Growth Community private Facebook group. It's for you. We want to make sure that we're adding loads of value. So make sure you're taking advantage of that. Thanks again for showing up today.
See you guys.